Professor Lwanga Lunyiigo, sebo weebale kutwaniriza ennamakula mu kifo kyo gy'obeere ekitala ku lw'entebe. We're really grateful that you've agreed to put aside the time to speak to us. I have been having these conversations about what I call the Uganda coffee story. And so I am very grateful that somebody of your caliber has agreed to speak to us. Mbadde nsaba otunnyonnyolemu both in English and Luganda. Lwanga Lunyiigo yaani, yasoma ki?
Saagala kugendayo nnyo.
Kiyamba kubanga ababa bakuwuliriza baba baagala kumanya oyo asinziirira ku ki okwogera ebintu by'ayogera, abimanyiiko ki, abirinako obumanyifu ki. N'olwekyo, at least for the academic record, yes.
I went to school.
Yes. I'm going to assume you're a Budonian.
No, I'm actually in Tari school.
Oh, really?
Yes. I'm in Tari school.
Okay.
Then after that, I came to Makerere.
Which years?
In Tari school, 59,
okay.
64.
Okay.
Maybe before we were born.
Yes, that's true. I was then born 4 years later. I think you were finishing Makerere by then.
And then Makerere, 65, 68.
Okay.
Then University of Ghana.
Okay.
So,
is that the one that's called East Legon or something?
Legon.
Legon,
yes. Yeah, University of Ghana, Legon.
Yes.
That's where I was. When I was Makerere, I majored in history.
Yeah.
And at the University of Ghana, I majored in archaeology.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I came back to Makerere, failed to establish a department of archaeology because I was the only one. Yes. But went into history. And that's where I am.
How come Ghana was able to have studies in archaeology? How did
there's a professor called Professor Merrick Posnaski.
Posnaski, yes, I remember, yes.
He started here.
Yes.
In the Uganda Museum. And lectured part-time at Makerere University. Then he was appointed to head the archaeology department at the University of Ghana, Legon.
Okay.
But this had been established there long before Posnaski.
Yeah.
But that's why I went there, because
you had known him from here.
Yeah, this personal contact.
So you have written quite a number of books.
A few.
Okay.
Don't exaggerate.
Well, in a country where writing isn't very common, how many titles do you have for which you've written?
Well, I have 5, I think.
Okay.
4 or 5. Yes. That's not a lot.
Well,
with a few papers.
We shall keep that.
Yeah.
There are 2 that I'm particularly fascinated about.
Yeah.
One is the story of Lwanga.
Yes.
Why did you write about Lwanga?
You see, Lwanga was demonized.
I think he was the most badly treated.
Yeah, demonized across the board.
Yes.
And of course, demonized by his enemies.
Yes.
The missionaries and the colonialists.
Yes.
And excuse me. So that is why I was fascinated by the subject.
Yes.
Couldn't there be another narrative
that we didn't know about?
Yeah, we have the colonial narrative, the missionary narrative, or demonizing Lwanga.
Yes.
Could there be another narrative?
Yes.
That's what encouraged me to do quite a bit of research.
Was there sufficient source material?
Yeah, if you read between the lines, including the archives, the
Yes.
colonial archives themselves.
Yeah, would tell you a lot.
Yeah, which they ended up by accepting him as a worthy
Opponent, at least.
opponent. Yeah.
As a minimum.
Yeah, the minimum.
Yes.
And some of the colonial officials also
Yes.
saw something among the some architecture among the ruins. Yeah.
And I keep reminding you the launch and inauguration of the book was a very interesting experience for me because
Yeah.
it is the first time an academic lecture was being delivered in Luganda
Only.
fluently, and there wasn't a single.
You could hear the pin drop.
I was fascinated. I was like, at what point
Yeah.
oluzungu oba olungereza onaalwogera
Where?
naye kwegamba bwe wali otusomesa kyajja kitya okusalawo nti
Njogera Luganda.
ojja kwogera Oluganda ku mukolo gw'okutongoza ekitabo.
Anti lunaali lunaku lwa Ssaabasajja Kabaka Mutebi. It was the 30th of something.
31st of July, Matikira.
Yes. So I wanted to honor him by speaking his language. That was the main motivation.
And actually it got me thinking, maybe we need to deliberately have more of those types of experiences because it creates a certain amount of self-confidence.
Yeah, but you see, the problem with our languages is that they are resisted. It's not because you don't know it, but because there are some people just resist these languages.
Whoa.
Yeah, why shouldn't we speak in English or something else? So that is the lack of self-esteem that goes deep into our psyche. Yeah, we don't love one another, we don't love what is ours.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem.
So, this book,
Yes.
Uganda, the Indian colony.
You've really marked it.
Oh, no, it's
Eva, leta n'ekitabo ekirala wali, the struggle for land.
This book, I was really, really fascinated. Actually, it comes at a time when there's a book I had been looking for that you might know. There was an Indian researcher who came to Uganda in the 50s, late 50s. Mukherjee.
Yes, Mukherjee. Yes.
So I had been looking for that book, and somebody found me 2 copies in Texas.
Texas.
Yes, and I got them. So I had just finished reading that book because he dedicates a very, very significant portion of his book to the construction of the colonial economy.
Yes.
Then yours came out. And I was, okay, let me see what the historian says after reading what the ideologue is saying.
Yeah. So, Mukherjee, I don't know whether he still lives, but
I wouldn't know.
an intellectual
Yes.
who was neither pro us nor pro them.
Yes.
He was somewhere steered in the middle.
Yes.
So, what he said was great. So the Indians, they don't care about us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the summary of his book. They don't care.
So let me take you back. Let's start with, because one of the big stories that you tell in...
And bring the go on, Eva. Later, the Democratic Party.
So the interesting, one of the most interesting readings of your book, Uganda, an Indian colony, is the story of coffee and how it becomes part of the modern economy of Uganda. And also Mukherjee spends a lot of time explaining that. But what would you say is the cultural history of coffee? Emwanyi
Okay, no,
for us.
I'm really fascinated by your question
Yeah.
because I've been working on it for
Okay.
quite some time.
Okay.
Now, they come here, they tell us that coffee was growing in the wild. So they, in fact, they discovered coffee.
In
Yes,
the wild.
in the wild, growing in the wild.
Yes.
And yet, for centuries, coffee was part of our culture. Here in Uganda,
Yes.
if you wanted to establish a blood brotherhood,
Yes.
the coffee bean
Yes.
was essential.
Yes.
And brotherhood did not come with the Europeans. It was here.
It found us. The community was already built.
Built here.
Yes.
Now the other one was the first entertainment you get in our homes
Yes.
is coffee beans
Yes.
tied in those
But dry
banana leaves.
fiber leaves.
Yeah,
Banana
fibers. And then you tell us you have discovered coffee, you have growing wild. No.
Yes.
We may have something in the forest. We are not using coffee for their purposes, but
Yes.
for our purposes.
So we already had domesticated it for
Yeah,
the
we
use
had domesticated
before
it.
the colonial establishment arrived.
Establishment, we knew about it, and for centuries, our culture was bound with the coffee bean.
Yes.
And now you tell us that, oh, we were finding it growing wild,
Yes.
when there are cultural aspects that they didn't understand. So we are taken for granted always.
Yes.
And people accept that, oh, it was growing wild. No, we had domesticated it.
Yes.
But you may domestic something, because in the forest it grows very well.
Yes,
that's
and
so.
as I have discovered, when you
Yeah.
talk to the botanists who are specialized in coffee, they tell you that it is indeed a forest crop,
It's a forest
and
crop.
it grew in the equatorial belt,
Yes.
equatorial forest belt.
And I come, my ancestry is Sese.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I've been here abroad for over 100 years.
From Sese.
My grandfather came with the Sese fly when they cleared Sese of
Okay.
people. So, but there, it is interspersed in the forest. I mean, you find
Yes.
it in the forest.
Yes.
And I think that is the best coffee.
True.
You people who are interested in more than the commercial aspect,
Yes.
you could go and rediscover the wild coffee.
Actually, I mean, when about in June, I went hiking in the Virunga. Virunga.
And it was there.
Yes. In fact, it's what there's different varieties. That's what the golden monkeys feed on. So that's their food. But
The monkey, the golden monkey.
yes, the golden monkeys. But also, what's very interesting, when we're growing coffee, some of the best coffee is that which is grown in almost a forest environment. So they ask, they encourage you to create what they call a microclimate
For the coffee.
for the coffee to thrive. It has to have what they call shade tree, but actually, it's putting it because that's when it survives.
Yeah, in Sesa, the forests were there,
Yes.
and the coffee was there.
Yes. Yes.
And then somebody discovered it. Yeah.
So historically, at what? Tell me about. Generally speaking, and then specifically coffee, but generally speaking, because I think you say it in your book that we had a certain, I don't know if it's Mukherjee, maybe mixing it, but there was a certain type of economy which had nothing to do with these crops of coffee and cotton. And I think you talk about it.
Yes,
Just explain to us
yeah.
what was the kind of economy
Yeah.
that existed at that time, the pre-colonial economy.
Yeah. You see, Bunyoro
Yes.
was the industrial hub of Uganda before these fellows came.
Really?
Iron working,
Abahesi.
Yes. Pottery. And they made some beautiful graphite pots.
Wow.
And actually, so great was their technology that Buganda got expatriates from Bunyoro to do certain things. Like, like the royal wear here.
Yes.
Yeah, Palace. It was that pottery, very fine pottery.
Yes.
Was the work of the Banyoro. And I think it was Kabaka Junju who established a camp for them at Nachigalala. Nachigalala is near Kajansi.
Kajansi is there.
Yeah, you have a lot of clay there, good source of clay. And you get your Banyoro expatriates, you give them a village called Nachigalala, and they did their thing there. And some of the Banyoro are still there, who came to Uganda during that period. So it was...
This is a fascinating story.
Yeah. So
where Uganda Clays is today, the whole area.
Yeah, that was Nachigalala. The next village is Nachigalala.
Yes.
From Kajansi to Nachigalala.
Yes.
And that's where the Banyoro expatriates were. Doing royal wear, doing ceramics, royal ceramics. So, and
colonial damage was really deep.
Yeah, and the narrative. The Banyoro and the Baganda were enemies. And here was Junju getting these expatriates
from Bunyoro.
Ceramicists from Bunyoro. So, there's a lot of things we have to rewrite. Yeah.
So there was already a thriving industry.
And then the iron working, the Banyoro Hall, was traded very widely in the region. And it was used as currency. In Teso, they used it as currency. The Banyoro Hall was so many cows or so, that kind of exchange.
So the exchange was denominated in the holes that had been made.
Yeah.
How many holes?
Yeah, per cow. How many holes do you get per cow? Things like that.
So the trade was already happening.
Yeah, already happening. And actually, in international trade, if you will, because it pervaded the entire intercastrian region.
Actually, I remember having a conversation with a very prominent businessman, Ugandan of Somali origin, Omar Ahmed, and he described to me how the area, the Teso area, Karamoja, the Rift Valley of Kenya, there was one of the largest cattle markets in East Africa. It was actually, and Delamere actually deliberately destroyed it because the
competition.
Exactly.
Now, for instance, the Baganda made good mbugo textile.
Yes.
Fine chimote, fine textile.
From Mituba.
And then this was traded around the place. But only royalty could afford it, the really good texture. We, the peasants, could only afford the rough.
You had no holes to exchange it.
The rough.
So there was almost, you could say, a division of labor.
Yeah. Then salt. It is amazing that we are net exporters of salt before colonialism. And when colonialism came, we imported salt from Eden. But we are net exporters instead of developing further our salt industry. And of course, Bunyoro was heavily involved in the salt trade and salt production, Katwe, Chibero, all these places. And salt was traded very widely up to central Tanzania, right? And up to Congo, up to Rwanda.
So there was already what you
there was long distance trade.
Long distance trade.
Yeah.
So exchange and determined in particular value.
Yeah. For instance, the Banyoro were so good at making iron things.
Yes.
Also in Uganda they made some, but battle grade spears.
Yes.
Uganda imported from Bunyoro. They're really good battle grade
Spears.
Yeah, they imported from Bunyoro. And then here the Banyoro imported dry rations. You know, potatoes. We knew how to keep
make them last longer.
Yeah, longer and so on. And the Banyoro, the Barusura, army, yeah,
yes,
they imported. So, you know, but you emphasize enmity, and where there were intermarriages, and then the emphasis was on enmity. The Baganda, the Banyora, your enemies, and that was perfect for their policy of divide and rule.
Because it created contradiction
and fear, and that's what they have been doing all along.
So how and when do they introduce this? You know, so of course they dismantle our economy, and when do they introduce what is called cash crops? So let's start with, because I think the first one was cotton. Yes,
it was cotton. Also, they discovered it. Growing wild. Actually, Baker, Samuel Baker, first introduced it in Bunyoro.
Yes.
In the 1870s. But then, of course, Baker found his match in Kabalega.
Kabalega was not taking.
No. He was a no-nonsense fellow. And then when the missionaries come here,
yes,
first of all, to soften the natives so that we can receive
salvation and civilization.
Whatever civilization and so on. So Uganda here was receptive.
Yes.
To Christianity.
Yes.
And even to Islam.
Yes.
And Bishop Tucker, the first bishop,
yes,
here, who wasn't killed.
Yes. Huntington had.
So
there's always a very interesting debate about Huntington. That there was a misinterpretation of the order.
There's he said, this is a degenerate form of Christianity, our religion.
Yes.
So and since our religion was eclectic, we just gathered those elements, and it was very easy because the advanced Christianity, according to them, was the best Christianity. Yes. So the thing worked very well.
Yes.
Then they started introducing their sects.
Yes.
And Mutesa the first.
Yes.
Asked some very interesting questions. Said, you both worship Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Yes. Then why are you fighting each other? Isn't it the same Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Yeah. Said, so in 1883, he made a declaration.
Yes.
Said, I've gone back to our traditional worship, but I allow everybody
to worship
as they want.
Freedom of worship.
Yeah, freedom of worship was established, but he clearly stated that he had retreated from all these foreign religions and gone back to
his traditional worship.
Yeah. But, you know, a lot, you know, Mutesa the First is very embellished by the colonialists.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But
people forget that he was called Mukavya. That was his
that was his nickname.
No, the real name, because he was
ruled with an iron fist.
Yeah, he was not a joke, but
he was a reign of terror.
Mutesa. Now, I think I'm digressing, but
no, we're just
then coffee. They discovered it. Naturally, I hear your coffee farm. I hear that our robust coffee blends other coffees.
That's true.
That is the best.
And actually, that also has its own issues. Yes, it's true. That's what over the last how many years Ugandan coffee has done. But that has hidden the fact that on its own, as Robusta, it can actually be consumed directly because it's very good. It's actually the best of all Robustas in the world because it's grown at a high altitude and it's very mild. But it was already growing, unlike the Arabica, which was specifically introduced. Yeah.
So we here had been chewing coffee for centuries.
Yes.
We didn't make coffee the way that these
roasting it and drinking it.
Yeah, but we chewed it.
Yes.
And I think it goes, whether it is a liquid or
actually
it goes into the same
the other historical story is
the same stomach.
long distance travelers.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Even in the pre-colonial times, used it as a
and there was long distance trade because as I've told you, people would take salt from the Tanzanians would come and take salt, the Congolese they would.
Yes.
And
so now, I think it's in your book somewhere, you talk about 1912.
Yes. That is very important.
Yes.
Because cotton here was introduced in
1903, I think.
As a commercial crop.
Yes.
1903 for Borap.
Borap, yes. The famous K. Borap.
Yeah, he's a missionary. He was a
was
commercial missionary.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, they were the ones involved in the setting up of Uganda Company.
Yes.
Which was a missionary enterprise.
So Uganda Company.
Yeah, it was a missionary enterprise.
I had never, I don't know why I thought it was a colonial.
Yeah, but
no, I thought it was the crown, part of the crown.
No. It was a missionary enterprise. Other places. And Borap, the first general.
Prof, wait a minute. Explain to me.
Yes.
So the missionaries come with the evangelical arm.
Yeah, and the commercial arm. Industrial arm, if you will. Yeah, and Borap was the industrial arm.
With the intention.
And the first general was established by the missionaries, Borap, the industrial arm of the CMS.
So the Christian Missionary Society also owned the Uganda Company.
Yes.
Which then starts commercial agriculture.
Yeah, and the other things, it was a big company. Very big company.
Okay, let's digress. What else did
importation of cars, the first importers of cars were the Uganda Company.
I am completely...
Yeah. They grew vanilla here in Lwanga. They did all sorts of things.
So
they bought land.
For agricultural
farming. Yes. And the first plantations, they were part of the plant elite.
This Lwanga, Mitchell Courts, and all of that, that crosses.
Yeah, all that.
The Madvan is now on the other side of it. All of that was...
Yeah, so the initiative was taken by the missionaries. You remember the three C's?
Yes.
Christianity, commerce, and capitalism. Yeah, what is the third one? Christianity, commerce.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. So that's why, now that makes sense, because it's the missionaries.
And Borap was a missionary.
I just thought he was an industrialist.
But he was employed by the Christian, that missionary society, to start the cotton industry here. The first ginnery here. I think it was in Kampala somewhere.
So, because I've also read, I'm trying to remember that now the Arabica coffee is then brought from Nyasaland to Uganda, again by missionaries.
Yeah, and it did well in some places, but in Uganda here it was.
Because the altitude was very low, so they went to Bugisu.
And I think, what about the Rwenzori?
Even Rwenzori.
I don't know.
So it's Bugisu, Rwenzori, a bit of Toro, and now eventually West Nile, the Paida, Zombo area. Then Chigezi, a bit of it, Kisoro.
Because the high altitude.
Yes, so it was mainly Elgon, Rwenzori, and the other higher altitude areas. So 1912, you said the...
Yes, no. The Indians were also coming in. And I think Viziram, Idina Viziram, set up the first Indian ginnery around Kampala.
Why did I think the only thing he did was set up a shop?
No.
He set up a ginnery.
Yeah, his fortune was made in cotton.
buying and processing
cotton. Yeah, that's where all these big fortunes were made. Even Madivani, that family.
Yes.
They first went into cotton. All these meta first went into cotton, and then later on went into sugar. But the base was cotton. So, you know, around 1908,
Yes.
Some traders introduced hand ginneries,
Yes.
so that if you had your cotton, you could hand these. You could go home and gin the cotton with these small things.
Yes.
And this did not discriminate. The Africans were ginning their small cotton, and of course, Borap was the big one, Chumacha Bora.
Yes.
And then, of course, Vietnam, I think, 1911 establishes the ginnery also.
Okay.
And then, 1912, something happens, very
Yes.
important. And the initiative came from Chiboga.
Chiboga.
Yes. That is where the first cooperative society was formed to deal with the new colonial economic situation.
So, if you don't mind, let me just read from your book.
Yeah, I may have forgotten.
Because you say, however, when the government realized that the natives could also become prosperous through their middleman role, they established a licensing regime which knocked them out of this role and left only the Indians in the middleman field, from which some of them graduated to become ginners. So the cooperative movement was born out of the grievance of exclusion from the native involvement in the cotton industry beyond growing it. They formed their first cooperative society, the Chinakulia Growers Cooperative Society, in 1913 at Chiboga in Singo County of Buganda. Why was the formation of, and you say, with the objective of marketing their crops cooperatively. Chinakulia was registered under the Business Names Ordinance in 1923, 28 years after its foundation, so on. Why was, because again, like I said, I might confuse the books, but there seemed to be discrimination. The Europeans also could grow their crops, but didn't seem to apply to them. They could deal with the full value chain up to the market. And then Indians seemed to dominate the process of buying the crops, whether it was coffee or cotton, and selling them. Africans, tell me about by Africans, I mean indigenous people. What was their role?
You see, around 1908, 1912, you get these small gins.
The ones you said by hand?
Yeah, and they can then sell their cotton to Borap straight, right? So when it seemed that these Africans were getting into the industry, they abolished the cotton gins. So they want to standardize. And they got rid of the cotton gins because that's how the Africans were making entry into the processing and said, no, your role is going to be growers. Now, these ginners have given them some opportunity to get into process, some little processing.
Some bit of primary value addition, as
yes,
we call it.
So they said, no, we want to maintain standards.
So in the name of maintaining standards, they banned these small gins and knocked the Africans out of the process.
Because you could do your small cotton or village, 2 or 3 people. And they had started doing that. And now, that's how the corporation started. Yeah.
So, just to go back, when does coffee start to become a major crop? Okay. Around what time?
Now, Europeans, and you know Uganda before 1902 was much bigger than it is now.
Yes. It went up to
Huge.
Naivasha.
Yeah, huge, and even parts of South Sudan,
Yes.
parts of Congo.
Yes.
And they thought that Uganda could become a settler's colony.
Okay.
At that time, they thought a settler
Economy.
colony,
A settler colony like
yeah.
South Africa.
Yeah, like Kenya.
Kenya.
Yeah, Rhodesia.
Rhodesia,
Yeah.
yes.
So, they got land concessions here. And they started plantation agriculture. And they started with rubber, which quickly went out of, because they couldn't compete with the Malaya.
Okay.
Malaysia.
Malaysia was.
Yeah. They couldn't compete. So, but as a young boy, I saw these rubber plantations.
Where were they?
Do you know Nakauka?
Yes.
Now beyond Nakauka, those villages around there, they
Yes.
had a huge rubber plantation going all the way to Nanziga and Maya.
I always wondered
Yeah.
what was on the lower side, because I've
Yeah.
driven through
Yeah.
Nakauka, that
Yeah.
road which goes up to Katende.
Yes.
But I always wondered what was the
Yeah.
lower side. So that was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
rubber plantation.
Rubber. Me as a child, I grew up with my grandmother in Balilia, near Jungo.
Yes.
And we walked through a rubber plantation to school. So the rubber didn't do well because they could not compete. First of all, they got huge forest concessions
Yes.
and harvested wild rubber before growing it.
Before growing
Yeah.
it, yes.
And then turned it to rubber plantations.
Yes.
Then after that, rubber, they couldn't compete. Then they went to coffee.
Oh,
Coffee was a European crop,
yes.
and Africans were not actually allowed to grow it until the 1920s. It was,
So-
for commercial purposes, you don't touch it. That was a European crop. The only thing you did was provide labor for
the European plantation.
But then, after the First World War,
Yes.
these fellows, the young planters had gone to war,
Yes.
and their laborers also had gone to war.
Yeah.
And then when they came back, the plantations were especially in Bunyoro and Uganda here, were in a sorry state.
Okay, because there was no labor to maintain
There was
them.
labor and then even management.
Yes.
And then they turned to the British government, those planters, to rescue them, give them some kind of subsidy, give them some credit and so on. And they said, no, they're also coming from the war. They didn't have much money in Britain.
Yeah, true. They're just lost.
They say, no, you try on your own. But you see, it really doesn't matter. Huh?
So-
If the cat is white or black.
As long as it catches the mice.
Yeah.
So is that when the big chiefs like Stanislas Mugwanya go into large-scale coffee in the Mitiana area?
I don't know much about that, I can't say, but the chiefs, their main role
Yes.
was to supervise the natives in the production of cotton and coffee. So you had, and Masaka became very rich early
Okay.
on coffee. And
Why
that's-
did Masaka?
And that's where they had a man, the Pokino called Seboa, Alex Seboa.
Yes.
He had fought in the civil wars, and then, Uganda was parceled out,
Yes.
Catholics, Budu. So he went there, and that's why coffee is called Ichiboko.
Please explain.
Yes, because Seboa,
Yes.
it was not peaceful. It was not a
Forced
peaceful
labor.
entry. Yeah, it was, you have to do your garden to plant your coffee and plant it properly. And if you didn't, the chiboko, you know what a chiboko is?
Corporal punishment.
Chiboko is this hippo.
Yes,
hide.
The hide.
Whip. So they were whipped to the gardens.
To go and plant coffee.
Yeah, to go and plant coffee. And the people of Masaka, Soba was very active.
Yes.
With his chiboko.
Yes.
And they prospered out of the chiboko.
Out of the chiboko. They became major.
So that's why it is called chiboko.
Yes.
From it was Seboa's work.
Yes.
So
yeah.
You know, the European planters were asking for subsidies, they were asking for credit, and so on. The Africans just needed a hoe. They didn't
need very much.
They didn't need very much. And by the 1930s, early 30s, they had surpassed European plantation production.
The Africans.
The
African coffee growers.
Yeah, coffee growers. And these other fellows, the plantations failed, completely failed.
Oh, okay.
And some of these were possessed then by Asians, and the Asians grew coffee, grew sugar. Some of those Chagwe forests, there were coffee plantations, and these people turned to sugar.
Oh, to replace the coffee.
Yeah. Because they couldn't compete with the natives in the growing of, because what they needed very little. The Africans needed very little. They needed the whole, and that's all.
So one of the, talking about that, one of the interesting stories that you talk about is the question of the availability of capital. And interestingly, I have been talking to people about the Bugisu business model. What was happening at that time, and how did the Bugisu model emerge as a solution to what was the problem then?
You see, the Bugisu coffee scheme starts.
Yes. In 1918 or something like that.
1917, I think.
Yes.
Then, how do we capitalize this?
Yes.
Of course, they had the cooperative, the societies.
Yes.
But not yet legalized.
Yes.
But there was not enough. So they turned to their local governments.
Yes.
And borrowed money from local governments. And used local government money to do their coffee business and paid back. And Bugisu, actually Bugisu coffee scheme, they didn't stop in Bugisu. They even borrowed money from Busoga local government. They thrived.
You say in your book, all businesses have their ups and downs, and the Bugisu coffee scheme was no exception. In 1935, the scheme had a deficit of £23,000 sterling. It borrowed 10,000 from Busoga local government, which was in itself a great initiative. If local governments could lend money when their business operations experienced problems, then the natives would have owned the economy without turning to any other source. Bugisu local government also chipped in, and with this financing, the National Bank of India began to advance credit directly to the scheme.
When they saw that these fellows were bankable, they started also.
So
nothing succeeds like success.
Exactly. Why? Because the most enduring thing, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but this may be the time, and we can go through the different historical periods. Why was the participation, particularly in coffee, of the locals such a big issue politically? And why did coffee from the colonial administration become such a political issue? Actually, if I may just read again from your book, you say the Bugisu model was almost accidental. In the 1917-18 coffee season, there were no takers, and the district commissioner, Perryman, arranged for the native administration to buy the crop and to have it shipped to London for sale. The native administration cut out the middlemen by buying direct from farmers, erected a coffee factory at my mother's village, yes, and several pulping stations that were where the cherries were bought and processed. They also bought native prepared parchment. This was the foundation of Bugisu coffee scheme, a local government scheme fully owned by the Bugisu. The idea was to convert the scheme into a cooperative organization at the earliest opportunity to which all the assets of the scheme would be sold. Why is local ownership? So first of all, what is local ownership and why is it such an important factor in this economic activity of coffee?
Well, our ancestors are not daft.
Yes.
They realized that there's money in coffee, that the Indians who had established ginories were making money out of it.
Yes.
So
And prospering.
And prospering. So why don't we get there? But of course, they had a lot of hurdles to jump.
Yes.
For instance, the licensing regime, they couldn't be allowed. The cooperatives were not officially recognized until 1946. That's when the Cooperative Act came into being. So they were operating illegally all that time from 1912 to 1946. The cooperatives were there, the cooperative societies, but operating illegally.
Underground, so to speak.
So some sort of underground economic movement. But they realized after the Second World War that, and then the government which came into power, the Labour government,
Yes.
wanted the cooperatives in the colonies to thrive. And that's why they allowed, they legalized the cooperative societies. But even then, the hand of the registrar, who was always a Muzungu, the registrar, was very strong.
Yes.
And the many natives were reluctant to legalize their operations. And for instance, Bugisu, it was not until 1954 that they became the Bugisu Cooperative Union. They could have done it much earlier, but
It took from 1917.
yeah, because it was so successful. Everybody, the Wazungu wanted it, the Indians wanted it,
Yes.
and the colonial regime here.
You actually say here that the Bugisu cooperative, the Bugisu coffee scheme, as of 1948, they had a balance of £500,000 sterling.
Yes.
Which, this is a very interesting statement, which was invested in gilt-edged securities yielding interest of £8,000 a year. £250,000 of the surplus was used to establish the Price Assistance Fund. What was the Price Assistance Fund?
You see the fluctuation in prices
Of coffee.
of coffee.
Yes.
So the idea was
Yes.
that when the prices are high, you
Yes.
don't give them the
full price.
The full price. You keep the money for a rainy day when
Yes.
the price is low.
Low.
Then you can give them some money.
During a bad trading season.
During
So
bad
as of
trading.
1948,
Yeah.
the Bugisu coffee scheme already had that in place.
Yeah.
And they were investing.
Yeah, and things like the when it falls down. You people built it. We built
How?
it. Well, that money was not used to to stabilize prices.
So
It went into British banks, and then no interest was paid on that money. So the British banks got it and didn't pay any interest on it. And when these schemes started, they got the money from there and used it for such things like the Owen Falls Dam.
So Owen Falls Dam, or
And they kept
Narubale as it is known now,
Yeah, they
was built
yeah,
from the money
yeah,
that had been saved by Bugisu coffee scheme.
yeah, for price assistance. And of course, Uganda was also growing a lot of coffee, and they also paid into the
So the coffee
assistance fund.
growers of Uganda, the money they were making was being used for infrastructure development
Yes,
already.
it was. and they were paid very poor prices until Cohen comes and paid the phenomenal 1 shilling and 50 cents.
You are calling it the Cohen what?
The Cohen prices.
The Cohen prices.
Yeah.
That's when Mwanyi Zavala.
Bantam. Yeah.
So people bought.
Yeah, from those proceeds. But the money was much, that the government was getting from coffee was much more than what they were paying to the peasants.
farmers.
To the farmers. So that is how the exploitation both by Indians and the state started. They are not paying the full price for the coffee. They're not paying the farmers.
The full price.
No.
So another paragraph I want to read from your book. You say the Bugisu coffee scheme was in a position to improve the lot of farmers by subsidizing their farm operations and improving productivity on their small farms. It could also have provided some social services such as health and education to the farmers. Above all, it was in a position to support native traders such as wholesalers and retailers to compete effectively with Indians, especially in small village towns, but government focused on the price assistance fund, which was another tax to the farmers.
Because you take away the money, which the farmers would have got to do those things I mentioned,
Yes.
but they don't get it.
So it's an appropriation, really.
Yeah, yeah. And they consider it as a tax. And you got their money into your banks, but didn't pay any interest on it.
So in chapter 5 of your book, you say, and then there's a quotation, maybe let me read that, and then you can tell us how the cooperative movement comes of age as a form of resistance to that kind of exploitation you've been talking about. I'll just read, you say, the future of Uganda's socio-economic development will, to a considerable extent, depend on functioning cooperatives. Cooperatives play a crucial role of mobilizing people and resources for socio-economic development and furthering the much-needed self-help and self-reliance. They lessen the problem of rural-urban migration by creating employment opportunities in rural areas, in farming and artisan activities. Cooperative gineries, factories, and other small industries were and continue to be the best vehicles of channeling resources to the rural areas besides employing salaried staff, wage earners, and casual laborers. Their role in the mobilization of savings for lending to individual members of specific development projects remains unequal. This is in addition to their countrywide network built at no government expense that is vital for the dissemination of technology and distribution of farm inputs. These are the attributes being the best schools for the democracy, make cooperatives indispensable partners in development. That's a quote you have in your book. I'm sure it.
And I thought it's basic, captures the role of the cooperative movement.
So what happened in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that then drives the explosion of these cooperatives as a form of resistance? I think there was something called Vatakabu.
Yes. Now, I'll begin the story around 1938.
Yes.
This is when Musazi,
Yes. Ignatius.
Musazi, and a man called James Chivu and others,
Yes.
they start a trade union,
Yes.
motor trade union.
Yes.
And when they begin to mobilize farmers with a view to adding value to cotton and coffee.
So their demand.
They became a political movement based on cooperatives. And the cooperatives were not recognized by the government until 1946. That's when the cooperative ordinance comes into effect. But these were started because Musazi was an educated man.
Yes.
He failed to get it. He trained to become a priest,
Yes.
but was not ordained in Britain because of discrimination. So you go and be ordained by the African Native Church. Said, no, I have to be ordained. This way I've got my training,
Yes.
and I've got to be ordained here. And so they threw him out.
So he comes back
Yeah.
and starts to articulate
Yeah.
the interests of the cooperative movement,
Yeah, these farmers.
the farmers.
Yes.
And what did the farmers want?
The farmers wanted
Yes.
to gin their own cotton. All the ginaries, most of the ginaries were Indian. They wanted 1930s coffee grown by natives was booming, and of course in Bugisu much earlier.
Yes.
They wanted to process the coffee.
So they wanted to participate
Yeah, to participate in
the
adding
processing
value,
and marketing
of coffee.
in order to get much more money out of their coffee.
Yes, and the colonial government
Refused.
and the Indians, who were very powerful, they were in the legislature, we were not.
Oh,
Yeah, already in the
they
legislature.
were in the legislature and
Yeah.
determining policy.
Yeah, they determined actually there was no democracy, but the governor would listen to them.
Yeah. Yes.
And they were now sugar plantation and so on. They had these plantations and so on. And they were powerful.
And they were a critical part of the colonial economy.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were a critical part of the colonial economy, and they didn't want us to get into the processing.
Yeah, because that would have created competition. They couldn't. I mean, we're
Yeah,
growing
they
the
couldn't-
coffee.
Yeah, we're growing it.
Now,
and
if we
could
start
have-
processing it,
and marketing it,
yes,
then that would be a problem for them. And the Jaffas and so on, who were in the legislature, they really opposed it.
so the Musazi movement, which
Yeah.
then becomes
And it morphs into a political
Political yes.
movement in the 40s.
in the 40s,
And,
but it has its beginnings,
in the cooperative movement,
which
and trade union
trade
movement.
union movement.
Yeah.
So, by the 60s, okay, maybe let me just.
Jumping the gun a bit.
Yes. So
you
let's
see
in
what
the-
happened.
So Cohen, yeah.
You see, there are cooperators all over the country. And in 1952, they established a political party, the Ugandan National Congress.
Oh yes.
It was mainly composed of the leaders of the cooperative movement. You got people like Onama.
Is that so? So the leadership, the Uganda National Congress, draws its leadership from the cooperative movement.
Yes, it does. And
my.
our nationalism began as economic nationalism.
So we had real
Yeah.
economic interests
Yeah.
that were being articulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in 1945, I call it a revolution, the
Yes.
riots. 1949 riots.
What were those riots? Those are
They-
I know they are called the Wataka riots.
Uh,
But what actually led to those riots of 45 and 49?
economic grievances,
And what were these grievances?
what we have already mentioned.
They
We want to gin our cotton.
yes.
We want to process our coffee.
Yes.
We want to market them. So they were suppressed. Many number munana, number muenda that are called. People were killed. And to make it worse, Indians were armed by the colonial government to kill Africans.
As part of suppressing those demands.
Yeah, those demands. And some Africans were killed, and some escaped to Kenya.
Into exile.
Yeah, the leaders, like Sonkov Massacre, he was a big cooperator.
He was a founder, was it?
Yeah,
Is that what was called West Mengo? No.
that is the Bwavu Mpologoma.
Bwavu Mpologoma,
Yeah,
yes.
Bwavu Mpologoma. So some of them ran to Kenya. So it was a serious matter. But, and of course, the chiefs had it very rough.
Yeah.
It is their property that was destroyed. And
So
because they were the ones and
enforcing the
enforcing the colonial oppression, the economic oppression.
So subsequently, Cohen comes.
Yes, Cohen comes. You know, he was a Fabian.
Okay.
And, Fena Brockway was also
Fena Brockway,
Fabian.
yes.
And he was already in touch with the cooperators here, especially Musazi. And
So
he was,
this is-
and the
was a
Fabians sent some young Europeans, like there was a lady who started the Abalimi Limited in Masaka. I've forgotten the name. And then John Shepherd, who helped in the management of the Farmers Union here.
Okay.
Helped Musaza and so on. So the Fabianism comes, and of course, Cohen was not a Christian, he was a Jew.
Oh.
And I sort of sympathized with the plight of the Africans and wanted them to get piece of the cake, to get into some action. That's how Uganda Development Corporation started.
So he comes with his progressive.
Ideas about the economy. And if it hadn't been for the Kabaka thing,
Yes.
I think he would have emerged as the most popular governor this country has ever had.
So he then.
Then, of course, he amended the cooperative, the cooperative
Amendment law
he did that
For
the amended law.
for Cooperative Development Council.
Yeah, he was asking why aren't these people registered in their societies under the act? And then the people said no, but you will still control the movement. Your registrar is so powerful.
Yes.
Could we get some of this power also? So the Muliras, the Musazis were involved in this. And all the UNC luminaries
Yes.
who were in the cooperative, Ngobi in Usoga, Obwango in Teso,
Yes.
Onama in
West Nile.
Nile, who else? Magezi in Bunyoro.
Bunyoro.
They were cooperators.
Bugisu was not Natoro. It was,
Yeah, somebody. So they started a political party.
in order to advance the political interests of.
The economic interests,
Just rather.
basically. So our nationalism in Uganda first started as economic nationalism. Yeah. And now,
So, Cohen, one of the things that he does, this is specifically to do with so I just wanted to to read a bit. So first of all, and I'll come back to this after independence, but I want to just again quote from your book. You say, within the cooperative movement, the Bugisu Cooperative Union enjoyed the greatest autonomy. The union set up the Bugisu Coffee Board to control the coffee industry in Bugisu. It fixed prices. How did they manage to get all of this autonomy within the context of the colonial administration?
you see, from I think around 1934, they got a British manager. And he did very well. And by 1941, it was they wanted actually they wanted to get hold of the Bugisu coffee scheme,
The Brits.
the British
Yes.
and the Indians.
They wanted to take it over.
They want to take it over. And they actually succeeded in taking it over for some time. And they began, instead of expanding Boburo, coffee works.
Yes.
Now
They take it to Kenya.
They take it to Kenya, just to weaken the scheme. And I think they tag on to management. I forget, but I think they tag on to, I think it's also
In the book, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the book. They tag on to management, they take it over, you get the cooperative, the Commission of Agriculture as one on the board.
Yes.
You get the district commissioner on the board, you get the district agriculture officer on the board, and so on. So, they buy shares into the Cooperative Union of Kenya. Yeah, they buy, I forget quite what I wrote, but they buy, they want to take it over, but I think it is Cohen who saves the day.
Yes.
Yeah. By, first of all, recognizing Bugisu coffee scheme as a cooperative union, belatedly in 1954, but that was during the Cohen regime.
Yes.
And that is when some Africans were also allowed into the management, top management of the scheme.
There's actually a paragraph here we say, in the Robusta coffee industry, the Cohen regime brought about significant changes, favoring African participation in the processing of coffee. The coffee industry board was created to handle coffee outside what was covered by Bugisu coffee scheme.
Because Bugisu was, I think, the Bugisu coffee, the union,
yes,
was actually exporting 190%.
So they were already advanced.
Yeah,
in their
90% by the early 50s.
Yes.
Yeah. So now they wanted to bring the other unions up to that mark.
Yes.
Yeah, but
so you say that from 1953 onwards, natives were allowed to build and own coffee processing factories, either as individuals or companies. But until 1957, most of the corporations remained Indian and Europeans.
Now,
yes. Who are the pioneers?
During that period,
yes,
that's when you get African coffee muggles, millionaires. You get Basude,
okay,
in Kijabwemi.
Yes.
You get Mukasa, Yokana Mukasa,
yes,
in Chivinge.
Yes.
You get Wamala in Mtiana. These were genuine millionaires. And for instance, I was attending Kako's secondary school, junior secondary school in the 50s. And Basude was something.
Really?
To behold, yes. He had a fleet of vehicles, lorries, taking his coffee through the Bukakata port to Port Bell and beyond.
And then to Kisumu and
as an individual. The cooperatives were operating.
But as an individual, Basude had the logistics.
Yeah.
He was already that well
and he was a big
organized.
coffee farmer himself, because I think he had over a square mile of coffee in Kijabwemi.
In the 50s?
In the 50s. You know Chabakuza?
Yes.
You go inside.
Yes.
It is called the Kijabwemi.
Yes.
I think about 6
towards
miles.
the lake?
No.
On the northern
towards,
side?
Yeah, towards Chiwangala side.
Yes.
And he had a fantastic establishment. And they competed for labor with the Indians from Rwanda.
Wow.
So and here in Chivinge, Yokana Mukasa started his own plant. In Mitiana, Wamala started his own plant. And
then there were the people in Luwero, Kasao, Eastern.
Then there were East Mengo.
West Mengo, yes.
And Wavumpologoma.
Yes.
And my question is, I don't think this is a digression.
No.
If you want to hand over the economy to the people,
yes,
I think the best way you can do it is through cooperatives.
Yes.
And cooperatives are bottom-up, not top-down organizations.
Yes.
And these were bottom-up schemes.
Yes.
Now we have top-down schemes.
Yes.
Those are not really cooperatives.
No.
So, when we are going to school, right?
Yes.
Of course, coffee was the one which took us to school.
Yes.
In my case.
Yes.
In other places, it was cotton. But then we also had local governments, what's their names?
Because they were able to generate revenue from these economic activities.
Yeah, and they were big.
And that's why there was a huge issue about bursaries those days.
Yeah. For instance, where I went to secondary school, in Tali school, all my schoolmates from Wankole, we are getting full bursaries from their local government.
Which was contributed by the economic activity of the area.
Or cows or whatever. And I'm sure many of the leaders today would not have gone to school if they didn't have those full bursaries.
So
first of all, strengthen local governments.
Yes.
Don't divide them up. Make them viable entities.
Economically viable.
Yeah, entities. Let them tax, and then let them deal with some of the social aspects.
Yeah.
Health,
But that's why they exist.
Yeah. But now you have a county like Ebudu with so many districts instead of a county, just one county with so many districts.
You can imagine
which was the other way around. You had many counties in a district.
In a district.
Now it is many districts in a county.
Yes.
Now that doesn't work. And I think it hasn't worked very well.
And also, you know, because, I mean, where I grow my coffee, so I've got the local, I mean, they're all asking me for this tax, that tax, this tax.
Yes.
But I am just one guy.
Yeah.
So imagine if all of us
We
who
are
grow
growing.
coffee.
Yeah.
So,
And you see, through the cooperative movement,
yes.
those unions and societies, a lot of people were employed. So that maybe today wouldn't be doing the slave trade thing.
Yes,
We
we're
wouldn't
exporting
be
labor.
exporting labor. I hear there are over 240 businesses exporting labor, externalization. Now, these people would be in their villages growing their coffee.
And you see, if it was functioning well,
Yeah.
I mean, like any season.
Yeah. Now, cotton is completely unheard. I mean, it's
Gone.
as if we never grew it.
At all.
But you can grow it again.
So you
And also, why don't we revive those cooperatives? Which were there.
and some of them are still active. I mean, if you go to
like Bugisu.
Bugisu,
Bugisu has had, Bugisu Cooperative Union has, people have really resisted it. Some
Yes.
people. But it has endured. Now, many of these cooperatives lost assets to the struggle.
yes,
Now, the Indians have been compensated
but the cooperative,
many times over.
yes,
But the cooperatives have not, and they have been phased out. And that is with the work of liberalization,
Yes.
the IMF, World Bank, and I think these may have turned out to be our greatest enemies as a country.
as you can already see.
Yeah.
And even our responses to them are not being structured and well thought through. Let me just read something you say and then maybe go into the post-independence period. After independence, the state did all it could to capture the cooperative movement and make it just another arm of government. Explain a bit more.
You see,
And why was it? Why did they find it necessary?
you see, by independence, the cooperatives were considerable economic power,
Definitely,
right?
yes. The
And-
Bugisu
yeah.
owned assets
Yeah.
and even had a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they had considerable economic power. And you see, if you have got economic power, you could transform it into political power. Definitely, you have to be consulted on many things, and that's power. And Mobutu regime realized that this cooperative movement is a center of power, right?
Yes.
Economic center of power.
Yes.
What do we do with it? We capture it.
Okay.
Yeah. And but to be fair to Obote, he realized that he has to maintain them. He didn't sweep them away. Said, can I capture them?
And keep them in existence as long as I control them and they serve my purpose.
That's what he did.
Yes.
And during his tenure, that's when cooperative movement established the Uganda Cooperative Bank,
Yes.
64, which was a major achievement
Yes.
on Obote's watch.
Yes.
But the minister of cooperatives was very powerful, controlling the and the registrar, the commissioner
of cooperatives.
Yeah, these were very powerful fellows, overseeing.
The operations.
Yeah,
of-
but he didn't kill the cow which produced the milk. He kept it going, and even played a big role in handing over all the ginaries to the cooperatives and giving them subsidies where necessary. So, by 1970,
Yes.
these cooperatives were ginning, I think, 100% of the cotton.
Yes.
But the Indians are so tricky. They also acted as agents for the cooperatives.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of the action.
They had to find a way to.
A way of retaining some space.
Yes.
So that's what happened. But during the first decade of independence,
Yes.
the cooperatives did well, but under the control of the government. They didn't destroy them. They embraced them, brought them nearer, and some of the leadership of the cooperative went into political leadership as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, the Onamas were already there, the
Yes.
Magezi, Ngobi, well,
Yes.
these were imprisoned in 1966.
So, what happens during Amin's time? This is 72 onwards. I've read some communication, correspondence, not communication, correspondence, where the cooperatives were still complaining about the behavior of some of the Indian merchants. So again, these same issues arise during Amin's time. How did we fare? Because I also remember, I mean, this is not in the book, but it is as a historian. One of the, I think the 18 points was Amin wanted to deal with condoism. But that's also the time when you get a lot of smuggling. Coffee. In fact, Kenya has a boom in 1976 and 77 from...
It was part of a boom.
What
But
happened?
Even the little that was left did something, quite something.
Yeah, because...
Because that's when the conference center was built,
Yes.
without a single cent being borrowed from anywhere. That's when we built the 13-floor house in New York, Uganda house in New York, on that coffee boom. That's when we bought quite a lot of property in Europe and Kenya for Uganda. That's when we got the color TV.
and bought Idi Amin a presidential jet.
Yeah,
I mean, not just some.
And, but that was given to him by the
But
Israelis.
But if the coffee has had such a profound economic effect. I mean, we've talked about the dam in Jinja, the hydropower station in Jinja. We've talked about other infrastructure stations. We've talked about the boom of the 70s and what it did for us.
Even the Uganda Airlines
Yes.
during Amin's time. By the time Amin was overthrown, we had 13 planes. I don't know how many we have today. But we had, and this is in 1977 when the community collapsed. All those assets were in Kenya.
Actually,
And, there was nothing here
Actually,
on the ground
they
that we
say-
could capture.
They say that
Yeah.
Njonjo
Yeah,
and the Tanzanians
First made sure
that everything was
Yeah.
that side,
Yeah.
and then they dissolved.
So no plane at all.
So Kenya Airways was started on our
Yeah.
on the assets of East African Airways.
Yes, in just 2 years, they had established an airline with 13 planes, including a cargo.
And no
cargo
debt.
plane. No debt. And that was the coffee boom.
So
Because one of the things that you can say for Amin,
yes,
that they had short fingers.
true.
Yeah.
They were brutal
Yeah,
in
but-
terms of dealing with human life
Yeah,
and
with the
opposition.
but
They were summary, but they never stole.
no, they never.
And they applied the money that they had to public service.
Yes, they did. That's how you could build an airline in 2 years of 13 planes. That's how you could export coffee using a C-130 to, I think it was to...
We airlifted coffee.
Yeah, we did, to Saudi Arabia. So these are the kind of things that we don't say about Amin.
But also they are instructive, because now the question that's running in my mind, and I put you as a historian, what are the lessons? I mean, we've had a long history of coffee, well over 70 years. We've had a history of...
No, it's now over 100 years.
Over 100 years.
Yeah. It began as plantation,
yes,
and then we, the natives, got in from the early 1920s.
And we've had a long experience.
Even that is a century already.
Yes. So we've had a long experience of various attempts by the state to control this business. So my first question is, what are the lessons we learned? But why do those different attempts fail?
To do what? To control?
Yes, because clearly every attempt tries, but either fails the industry or fails in what it is trying to do. I mean, the colonial administration tried by controlling it, trying to prevent the locals
from coming in.
Africans from coming in.
But they came in all the same, after a lot of agitation.
Yes, then the post-independence governments through managing the cooperatives. So the question which really is...
And then, of course, the introduction of coffee
marketing board
and the lint marketing board
and produce marketing.
And produce marketing.
What informed that? Because the state wanted to be in charge of
the resources. And
as you say, initially, they seemed like, especially during Amin's time, they were whatever was left from the smuggling, they were able to do the developments.
Yeah, to do developments here. But you see, fast forward.
Yes.
One of the greatest economists we have today, living economists.
Yes.
One of the best, and probably the best, is Ezra Suruma.
Yes.
Now, and you cannot doubt his patriotism.
Definitely not.
Nobody can doubt it. I'm sure he loves this country and he loves us. And you see, he put up a lot of resistance when they were privatizing UCB.
Yes.
And the history of UCB is very interesting because this was the collections of peasants.
Yes.
Credit and Savings Bank morphed into UCB.
Yes.
And he really tried his best to tell the powers that be that this one should not go.
Let's keep it.
Yeah, let us keep it. And Kenya Commercial Bank was smaller, much smaller at that time than the Uganda Commercial Bank.
Yes.
And yet now you can see it is a multinational.
Yeah.
It is in Sudan.
It's actually the largest bank in Kenya.
Yeah. No, it is a multinational. It is in Rwanda. It is here.
It
is in Sudan. So, Suruma saw all this, said, no, let other things go, but let us keep this one. And he fought long and hard and failed. But Suruma was more recently vindicated when the president said, I think here,
we made a mistake.
We made a mistake, right? Now, the same Suruma is talking about UCDA.
Yes.
Now, rationalization is a great idea.
Yes.
But let us do it on case-by-case basis.
Yes.
Yeah? Some definitely should be rationalized. But let us do it on case-by-case basis.
And in fact, he has made the argument that UCD is not even a cost to the government.
Not even a cost, but
So the
let
argument
us-
of rationalization doesn't apply to it.
Doesn't even apply.
Yes.
But if we want rationalization, that's a great idea, but on a case-by-case basis.
Also, the thing about those ideas, I mean, I have stayed away from debating the rationalization issue, but I can say this now, that what you do with those kinds of initiatives is you, I think in the innovation language it's called prototype. You do a pilot.
Study and see how it works.
Yes, so look for those where the cost of doing so is very, is not very, it's actually not even high. Like one of the examples is, if you, what would be the effect of merging investment authority with free trade zones, with tourism, with, and if the cost is not, then you experiment with those and say, over the last 3-4 years, we've seen what can happen,
When we
and therefore,
do this, yeah.
let's do this. But what we've gone and done is started with the one that has the greatest impact on our economic activity and want to start there. We and mainstream it to a place which is not even prepared to take it.
Yeah, because
Ministry of Agriculture is dead.
Is not, because fisheries is on its own. Is now it's, I think it's the army, and cotton is no more. And I think they should be working hard to revive those.
No,
things.
and the thing is, they're really just civil servants.
yeah,
They don't have any
yeah,
structures, don't have any systems. So
yeah,
you really are taking them.
To-
So, but as you say, again, it goes back to, and as we've seen.
So I want to go back to Surume a little bit.
Yes, yes, please, yes.
He has expressed himself,
Very clearly.
pronounced himself on UCDA. Now, I was looking at Googling something, and I found that the leading 10 exporting companies, coffee
Yes.
exporting companies, are foreign,
Yes,
and they export 76%
yes,
of the coffee. Right?
Yes.
76%.
yes,
We are left with 24%.
yes.
And then I think sometime back, Pinetti
Yes,
wanted to take the whole thing.
yes.
Now, I Googled Pinetti, and his profile is not very defining.
Yeah.
And why Pinetti? His profile. I won't mention what
Yes.
I saw.
Exactly.
But anybody carrying out a background check would not have settled on Pinetti.
Exactly.
So, of course, there is liberalization.
Yes.
But I think we shouldn't open our economy like who has opened their legs.
Exactly.
No, we should have some, we should be married to our economy.
The South Africans,
Yeah.
the South African liberation movements call it the commanding heights of the economy.
Yeah, the commanding high. You see, the Guptas capturing the state.
Yes.
Now Pinetti, if he captures coffee, he captures the state.
You see the argument
Yeah.
therefore then, and again, that's why my conversation with you is so enlightening and so important. That this is not the first time.
No,
We have a historical...
yeah, resistance, and I think taking over from the Musazis,
Yes.
there is a new resistance
Yes.
against the taking of coffee.
Yes.
People say they still want to gin it,
Yes.
to
process
process it,
Yes.
and if there was cotton, to gin it. And I think this, is
Actu-
reasonable.
Actually, for
Otherwise, how do we take over the economy
actually,
as natives?
what is very interesting
Yeah.
for in the coffee debate as it has happened recently is how powerful the communities that grow coffee are expressing their ownership of it
Yes.
and not
Bugisu, Uganda.
yes, and not wanting any kind of, because there's an element of suspicion even about the state and its intentions. And it's been made worse by attempts to force through the policy. But I think one of the things that's missing in this discussion is, again, from your historical experience and whatever you've seen you could advise, in the current circumstances, liberalization took place, all of this took place. How do we come back based on how people... So one of the things you've suggested is cooperatives. How do people
You see,
empower? Yes.
I think it would be very easy if the leaders
Yes.
realized that structural adjustment didn't do Uganda any economic favors, because we now have a huge debt,
Yes.
and you know, we are looking at things like oil,
Yes.
we are looking at things like gold.
Yes.
So, but you see,
Extractives, as they are called.
yeah, now our oil will last only 30 years.
Yes.
And somebody has said that we will not recover the money we have put into the oil infrastructure. We shall
Just the cost of infrastructure
yeah, we
alone.
shall not recover it. So
So it's a sunk cost.
it's a sunk cost. Now, of course, the glamour of being an oil producer, there's that glamour. And of course, some people get some money. But what gets to the ordinary man? To the
How
ordinary
does the country generate
yeah,
wealth?
Yeah, the cotton and coffee got there to the ordinary fellow. That's why they are building their humble habitations
And that's
now.
yeah, precisely
Yeah,
because
yeah,
when
yeah.
I sell my coffee,
Yeah.
the money goes straight into my pocket.
Yes.
Now they are suggesting that we go and sell at the auction. How do I go to the auction?
An ordinary man.
Yeah.
So we have gold now is the major export.
Yeah.
But where does that money go? Does it get to the
Well,
back to
first
the
of all, how many local, what is the
are involved,
population
yeah, involved in gold?
in gold?
Yeah, but
Coffee speaks for itself. It's 12 million people.
yeah. So how many involved in gold? And where is the money going? It's a huge amount of money. I hear it is now the major export.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, but the man in Ikoma Simbi builds his small house on coffee proceeds,
Exactly.
not on gold proceeds.
Pays school fees
Yeah,
for his children.
Yeah.
They
And they have
con-
never
and-
seen gold, those fellows.
And the economic activity is then driven by those people spending money in the economy.
In the economy. Now you have heard where oil has been extracted, say Venezuela, for almost 100 years. Where is the economy?
Cameroon.
Yeah.
Cameroon, they extracted 25 years, 30, it's finished.
Yeah. Yes, finished. It will be finished here, but we shall not cover the cost of the infrastructure we
Alone.
are setting in place, and we are borrowing a lot of that money. So, coffee is very resilient. 100 years.
Yes.
Uh,
And in an earlier conversation, I said to you that not only is coffee resilient, those who grow it are even more resilient.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, why don't we start from the known and move to the unknown?
Yes.
Let us strengthen coffee.
Yes.
Let us strengthen cotton. And these are on high demand in the world market. You see, the journey came lately, Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because they organized, they are now producing more than us.
And really, really bad coffee, comparatively speaking.
Yeah. So why? This is the only industry because we are left with. Because I hear tea is in trouble.
Tea is gone. In fact, the worst thing about tea is not just that the price have collapsed, but farmers are uprooting.
Yeah, tea has gone. Cotton
Gone.
Nobody hears about it. So
Fishing,
we are left.
Fishing is
is gone. So we are left with one. And now we want to discourage.
You want to disorganize.
To discourage those who are producing it.
Yes.
From producing it. And you see, something about coffee should be remembered by our lawmakers, by the government. You know, you can grow coffee. And you can decide to neglect it.
Yes.
For years. And when the circumstances are suitable,
you come back and
you come and slash around and coffee
grows again.
It grows again.
Yes.
So in the 1940s, there were what were called cotton hold-ups, right?
Yes.
And this really bothered the colonial government. You have harvested your cotton, but this Bataka tells you, don't sell it, keep it in your house. Yeah.
In the 40s?
In the 40s.
And they kept their cotton?
They kept their cotton in the houses.
You're not going to come into my house and force me to be easy.
They are so desperate. I mean, what do you do if I don't pick my coffee? If I don't pick it, what do you do? If I don't
maintain it.
Maintain the garden, what do you do?
You see,
the peasants are very independent, or used to be very independent. If you only allow them a small piece of land, they grow their potatoes and their matoke and their beans and so on. And
they don't care about you or the state.
They don't care about the money economy. And they can even do small business amongst themselves. If you have chicken, I give you maize or something like that, butter. So let people be very careful with the coffee. And I think the best thing to do would be to go to the people who grow the coffee and say, what do you think?
Exactly.
And they have the ideas. They are not daft.
That's why they're doing well.
Yeah, that's why they are doing well. But you agree with them. Should we give it to Peneti, who is going to add value, or should you keep it?
But also, if a big processor comes and is supposedly adding value,
and what value?
He's the one who's going to make the money.
The money, and not you.
Not me, the farmer. Me, he'll pay me the same price that all the other buyers are paying.
And in the case of Peneti, we're supposed to determine the price.
Exactly.
To decide, and then not to pay taxes.
So the other point, I was going to make to you, I kept thinking about it.
So let me land.
Suruma.
I follow what he writes.
Yes.
Because I think he's very patriotic. I think he's one of our best economists.
Yes.
And if we live long enough, and his ideas on UCDA, they may, at some future date, say we made a mistake. But when it is too late, but as we made a mistake with UCB.
And actually the cost of this mistake, one is going to be much higher than with UCB.
So let us listen to people like Suruma. I think he means well.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think he's one of our best.
And it is good to learn from him.
Yeah, and he's a brave man. He says this won't work.
Yes.
And let us keep this. And eventually he's vindicated.
Yeah.
Maybe even in this case he'll eventually be vindicated.
Related to that, I was thinking that, you see, if you ignore that advice and the people decide not to give you their coffee, or they decide to smuggle it to other countries, now you have a higher cost of enforcement than when you were dealing with UCD, because now you must invest in policing so that people don't smuggle it across the border. So now you must patrol the full range of the border so that people don't cross with their coffee at night and go to Tanzania or go to Kenya.
And even when you had the brutality of Amin,
they still did it.
They still did it. You have to excel Amin in order to achieve it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but would you like to excel Amin?
And yet here, everyone is benefiting because the buying is taking place locally. And
they are paying their taxes to the government.
Yes, and there is no perception or bitterness that you're interfering with them.
And in any case, 76% is already in foreign hands.
And there are other ways to reverse that, because there are ways you can empower local people.
And the best way to empower them is to revive the cooperatives.
And fund them properly.
Yeah, and fund them, and even pay the assets, for the assets which were used
Compensation, yes.
during the struggle.
Well, they were doing it, and then somebody stole the money from the Ministry of Trade.
Yeah, but that's an administrative problem. You can
So
solve that.
as a way of conclusion, again, I go back to the old question, but really as a historian, one who has studied our history, but also one who has lived
This history.
this history. What would you say, and what would be the hallmarks of your lessons to the people who are making these decisions, especially the manner in which they're making them? I mean, I think that's one element. But two, that there is actually a history of coffee. What would you advise them?
I think throughout these 100 years of coffee and the cooperatives, we have had resistance right from the grassroots to resist exploitation. They wanted to get, for all this time, they wanted to get into the ginning of cotton, the processing of coffee. They succeeded through the cooperative movement. Unfortunately, the cooperative movement is not there now, except BCU. But I think, you see, when resistance is not organized, it can even be more dangerous. But if you have your cooperatives and they're saying, please, we want this ABCD. So, but that's the long how. But most of the leaders grew up on coffee and cotton. And they know about these struggles. And I think one of the struggles today is to try, the government should try and hand over the economy to the natives, right? So that they feel they own the country, they own the economy. Of course, we have ideas coming from outside about foreign direct investment and so on. But I don't think those things, directing foreign direct, will ever develop the country. Because those who bring in the money, they want profits.
And they take it back out?
Yeah, and take it out. And not only profit, they want to exploit you.
Fully?
Yeah, not fair trade.
No.
They want to exploit you. So, and I'm sure all our leaders are interested in Ugandans possessing the economy. That's why they are there in the first instance. And if that is the aim, please restore the cooperatives. And it shouldn't be very difficult because they're already there.
The human infrastructure is there.
They are there. You know where their properties were and where the headquarters, Banyankole Kweterana, Nyakatonzi, Achori, they can be revived. And then that will be the first step in handing over the economy back to the people. And steer away from structural adjustment the best way you can without harming the country too much, but get your economy back, get it into your own hands. Because today, a lot of what we call our economic policy is made from outside. If, for instance, IMF and World Bank don't approve your budget, they will say, no, change this, change the other. And I think we are looking for autonomy, economic autonomy, political autonomy. And I think if, I'm a conservative, I should admit that. Yeah. So I'm talking...
Right. You don't sound like that.
No, I'm talking in terms of the cooperative movement, which gave a lot of jobs to our people. Graduates were being employed in these cooperatives. Engineers, all sorts of people. And now, today, we have the border economy, where even graduates, even science graduates, are employed. And I think this is not good for the country. To have your civil engineers on motorcycles, to have even your pharmacists on motorcycles. So let us start today or yesterday to revamp the cooperatives. Bearing in mind that cooperatives are bottom up. And bearing in mind that after some time, if we had revamped the cooperatives, this slave trade would not be going on. And I think a lot of our professionals will be employed in the economy in the rural areas. But, I hope the politicians can change their mind on some of these things. Yeah. And it's too late for me to try my hand at politics.
On that note, Professor Lwanga.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for...
I hope you read it, whatever is not good.
No, it's better to let the people listen to your advice, because otherwise it doesn't make sense if you edit out certain parts. So I am really grateful for the time you have given us. Yeah. Thank you very much.
And if as a parting shot.
Yes.
I think I'm a good Muganda and a good Ugandan.
Yes. Thank you very much.